It's fun to be inquisitive. Be nosy. Stick to your passion. Find out more for yourself. Quest is fun. Join me, Tristan Pang, on a journey of inspiration. Welcome to Youth Voices.
Hello everyone, welcome to my show. This is your host Tristan Pang on Planet FM 104.6 Youth Voices. Great to have your company here today. I hope you're all keeping well during this lockdown period. The coronavirus pandemic is causing chaos worldwide, and this is a hard time for many people. So we all need to hang in there, and these crazy times will pass by soon. The lockdown doesn't mean we all have to be bored either. There are plenty of fun things we can do while stuck at home. For example, listen to the radio here today. I have a very special guest today, all the way from America in fact. But don't worry, we're maintaining a huge social distance. I'm going to be interviewing him from my home studio in Auckland, 13,000 kilometers away from his Atlanta home using online conferencing. He is Lowell Brillante. We started connecting recently when he asked me to be part of his new podcast series, Child Prodigies, on iHeartMedia. I didn't realize that Lowell is a prodigy himself. He should be interviewing himself on his own Child Prodigy series as well. So he self-taught and started producing digital media from very young. And the video channel Lowell has made in college has a combined total of approximately 6 million hits. Later on, Lowell graduated from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte with a degree in mass media. In the next 10 years, he produced all sorts of media, from documentaries to music videos. Lowell is now an iHeart producer. Let's welcome him. Hello, Lowell. Welcome to my show.
Oh, awesome. Glad to be on here.
Well, you work at iHeartRadio, is that correct?
Yes.
So could you tell us what you do there?
Sure. I'm a podcast producer. So I work on different shows to help develop them, pre-production, production, and then also post-production, editing, mixing, mastering.
That sounds really cool. So what type of shows do you produce, Lowell?
So I work on a few different shows. One in the past I worked on was Katie Couric Next Question. That's pretty big. I work on one called Before Breakfast, and it's like 5 minutes of inspirational tips for working that comes out every morning. Another one I work on is Daniel and Jorge Explain the Universe, which is a physics-based podcast with Daniel Whiteson. He's a physicist at CERN, and he's a professor at UC Irvine. And then his co-host is Jorge Cham, who is a pretty famous webcomic for graduate students called Piled Higher and Deeper.
That's one of my favorite comics I've read. I've got a couple of his books and also the movie that was based off his book.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, We Have No Idea. That's the book that they wrote. And I also work on Part-Time Genius, which is a pretty popular podcast, although they don't record as much as they used to. And then I'm developing my own podcast called Prodigy, which I'm hoping, looking forward to having you on. And it's about child prodigies. Yeah.
Thank you. That sounds really cool. So, well, you're going to interview me in a week or so, and you're going to start producing a couple of the shows. So who else have you got on the Prodigies podcast?
So I have like about 8 episodes that are mapped out with different people, but the first one, it'll either be you or the Polgar sisters. The Polgar sisters are 3 female chess prodigies, and I'll be interviewing Susan Polgar for that episode. So I'm excited about that.
Ooh, that sounds really cool, and I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks a lot for inviting me onto that show, Lowell. Let's kind of backtrack a bit. So how did you first get started into kind of the production business? When did you first get interested?
Well, when I got out of college in 2008, it was like pretty big financial crisis. So I had trouble finding a job. So one of the things I enjoyed doing in my free time was just making videos. So I started freelancing and making videos, and I became a video editor and producer. And I did that for 10 years or so. And then about a year ago, I was looking to switch jobs and companies. And I happened to have a connection to somebody who worked at iHeart, a very, very famous podcaster, Chuck Bryant. He's one of the hosts of Stuff You Should Know. It's one of the biggest podcasts in the world. And he got me an interview, and they hired me, and I've loved it. I love working in audio. It's really fun.
Oh, wow. That's really amazing. And I think being a producer, you get to meet a lot of other people, right? And you get to listen to a lot of stories from around the world.
Yeah. So at first I was basically just editing, but as I got more familiar with with podcasting, I was able to start working on the front end and producing and booking guests and stuff like that. And then actually, this podcast will be the first one. Prodigy will be the first one that I'm actually personally hosting. But my part is almost entirely scripted, so I'm not like a huge great person talking off the cusp. But when everything's scripted, I can do it pretty good.
Well, you're doing great now. So,
Appreciate it.
now, how about any big vision? So, you're starting up this new Prodigy podcast. How about in the future, say in 5 or 10 years? Where do you see yourself heading?
Wow. Okay. That's a good question. I would like to be more, I wouldn't mind still working in audio and podcasting. I'd love to be a little bit more higher up and far removed from the creation of the shows and more into bringing in and developing talent and then developing shows. So I find the development aspect really interesting. So I'd like to get more into that.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I guess one of the last questions I want to ask you before we head off is there anything you want to share with kind of my listeners here in New Zealand about how kind of to inspire them to, I guess, to find their own talents and find their own passion? So yours was obviously going into the audio industry with editing and producing. So how would you tell other people to kind of spot their own talents?
Well, to be honest, I sort of just fell into both of those and just happened to enjoy it. But when I first started in video production, it was something that I enjoyed as a hobby. And I think, that's a pretty common piece of advice is like find something that you enjoy doing as a hobby and turn it into a career. But, there's a lot of people getting into a podcast these days. It's a pretty saturated market, but I can say if you're interested in podcasting, go out and find something that or whatever subject career, find something that you would be interested in and then develop it, work on it as much as you can in your free time. And I think eventually it'll work out for you.
So my radio show Youth Voices is a program aiming to inspire young people to follow their dreams and passions in order to succeed in life. In your professional opinion, what do you think?
That's a great concept. I can tell you that right now. And there's a surprisingly, well, maybe not surprising, but there's a big lack of content in that area right now. So as more people are getting into podcasting, the majority, like 80% of people listen to podcasts are on their on an Apple device. So as Android gets more people start listening through Androids, that market's going to grow even more, and more people are getting into podcasting. So I definitely recommend looking into it.
Thank you so much for your kind words, Lowell. Before we finish this interview, let us listen to one of Lowell's great shows. It is Daniel and Hoy Explain the Universe, one of my favorites.
Is the universe infinite?
Or is it just mind-bogglingly enormous?
Right. Enormous, but with a limit, like finite. Finite, right? Like, does it have a size, or does it go on literally forever and ever?
Yeah, it's totally a fascinating question. And I was reading about this, and I came across the sort of ancient argument for the universe being infinite. Some of the ancient Greeks, they believed the argument was infinite, and they just needed a javelin to prove their point.
Really? Wow. All this time you guys have been building telescopes and space telescopes and particle colliders. All you needed was a stick.
Yeah, exactly. I like the low-tech solution to some of these questions.
Wait, so you're saying the Greeks wondered if the universe was infinite? So they knew kind of generally what was going on, like we're a planet, we're in a solar system, and then were they just wondering if the Earth was infinite?
No, they knew that, there were planets. In fact, the Babylonians knew that there were other planets out there in the sky. We didn't know the nature of space or, that the sun was just an example of other stars, but they had the sense that, the sky wasn't a ceiling. The things went on for a while, and the question was, how far do they go? And so,
how tall is the ceiling in this biodome we live in?
Yeah. And they had this fun sort of thought experiment because they couldn't venture out into space, and it involved throwing a javelin. And the argument goes something like this, like, imagine the universe is finite. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Like
then
it has an edge to it.
It has an edge to it. Now go to that edge and throw a javelin. What happens? Either the javelin keeps going, in which case you're not actually at the edge, right? And repeat forever. Or the javelin bounces off something. It like hits an obstruction, in which case that obstruction is past the edge. And so this is sort of an argument that suggests that the universe must be infinite.
Oh, I see. It's kind of like testing how big your house is. If you walk and you hit a fence, throw a javelin. And if it hits something, jump the fence and see if there's another fence. Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, precisely. And this argument is essentially trying to say that it's nonsense for the universe to be finite. That is no way in which an edge makes any sense at all. Because if you get to an edge, then, you have to think what's past it. And the javelin is sort of a way to probe it. Now, that argument, of course, totally flawed. It's not a proof that the universe is infinite.
The Greeks were wrong? What? You can't prove that the universe is infinite with a javelin?
Turns out we have learned one or two things since ancient times.
You need two javelins.
Yeah. And we'll get into it in much more detail, but the essential idea is that this is flawed because the universe could be closed. It could be that the universe sort of loops on itself, and you could keep throwing that javelin and picking it up and throwing it and picking it up and throwing it forever, even in a finite universe.
Interesting. It is possible, you're saying, for the universe to have a wall at the end.
I actually do think that that's not nonsense, that it's possible for the universe to have a wall. But I think the simpler idea is for the universe to sort of just be closed on itself, like on the surface of a sphere. If you're going to throw a javelin and then follow it and pick it up and throw it, you could do that on the surface of the earth basically forever without hitting a wall. That doesn't mean the earth is infinite. It's not.
And finally, Lowell, we have a lot of young listeners who are interested in podcasting. In 2 minutes, can you tell us a bit about how you got into it?
I'm going to go through the steps for starting your own podcast. First, you want to have a concept. You can have something broad, like a discussion of various topics that interest you, like our podcast, Stuff You Should Know. But many people think it's better to choose something more focused, like physics or skateboarding, for example. You can also try something original. I work on a show called Personology that takes a psychological look at famous historical figures. Of course, it should be fun, so I suggest choosing a topic that is most interesting to you. Also, many people find it easiest to do a show that includes a friend. Just know that the more people you include, it can become more difficult to produce and edit. An interview-based show is another common style that many listeners find engaging and informative. The biggest podcast in the world right now is Joe Rogan, and that's an interview-style podcast. Second, you'll want to figure out how you're going to record. A decent quality mic is really not that expensive. You can purchase a Samsung Q2U USB mic for $60 online. Most any laptop or computer is fast enough to record and edit audio, because it's not hardware intensive like video editing is. If you want to record more than one person for your podcast in the same room on the same computer, then you'll need a mixer. A Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 is only $170 and will let you record two people at the same time into one computer. Another affordable way is for each person to purchase their own USB mic and record their own audio at home. You can use Skype or Google Hangouts to communicate. You'll also need software to record and edit your audio. Audacity is a free program that works on both Windows and Mac. There are plenty of tutorials on YouTube for how to use it. Once you create your podcast, you'll need a platform for publishing. Anchor.fm is a highly recommended free website that will push your podcast to every platform. To name a few, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify. Lastly, don't be discouraged. It takes time to build an audience. But if your main focus is creating high-quality content, you will eventually build a following. In the beginning, you probably won't sound very good, but you'll get the hang of it if you keep at it. Even if millions of people aren't listening to every one of your episodes, some people will, and I guarantee you'll have a positive impact on them.
That's so awesome. All great advice. Thank you so much, Lo, for coming onto my show. I hope you can stay healthy and stay safe on the other side of the world. So that's all from us today. Please visit my website www.questisfun.org.nz/youthvoices. That's quest-is-fun.org.nz/youthvoices. Or please email me at youthvoicesenz@gmail.com. Remember, together, we can flatten the coronavirus curve. So please stay home, stay in your bubble, stay local, and it will save lives. See you next month. Bye!
Join me again for another exciting program next month on the first Wednesday at 2:10 p.m. or listen anytime online at planetaudio.org.nz/youthvoices or listen to the archive on my website www.questisfun.org.nz/youthvoices. Youth Voices.